Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's video, we're going to keep on working on Brenda's Roadster as the parts and stuff come in for it. And as we get stopped, we'll go work on some of the other fabrication stuff in the other shop. I think there's enough this week that we can keep on working on the Roadster and pushing it to the finishing stages. A few things that we couldn't get resolved last week was one of them was where to mount the coil. I had a coil mount that would traditionally kind of go on the firewall here, which is not a bad place to go, but the owner would like for me to find a way to mount it here next to the distributor so that the coil wire is as short as possible. Another thing, this just came in late today, was that we want to put in a like an accessory power for like charging cell phones and different things. So we've put one of these in before on the 32 pickup. This one has a switch onto it. Not sure if we're going to use the switch to turn this stuff on and off, or actually use that switch to turn the fan on and off. That's yet to be determined, but anyways, we have those things. Still waiting on a few other things, some pigtails and stuff to come in, but if they come in this week, we'll work on that. Then the other thing I would really like to do is actually put the radiator on and the grill shell sitting on the floor over there, just to kind of make it look more like a finished Roadster. We got the radiator support rods come in and a few other little bits and pieces, so it's starting to come together, and hopefully we can start putting it together a little bit more. So anyways, watch along and we'll keep on working on Brenda's Roadster. So we got a few little small things done today. Took up a little bit of time, but one thing I was mentioning, needed to have a ground wire going from the engine to the frame. So we now have this in place. It's screwed into the frame there. I made sure that it was raw metal against the copper, and then same thing, it's up against a bolt going to the engine. And then I tested it with the continuity tester to make sure that we've got a good ground there. The other thing, we ran a battery cable from the back of the car up to the starter relay, so you can't quite see it, but it's just on there where my finger is. And then I've got it coming up out of the back right there. So it's we've got it all strapped in place underneath the car so that it doesn't rub up against anything. And it's coming out of the floor there. So I'm going to be making a battery box in this episode to sit right there. The cable we're using is 4 gauge. I normally would use a 2 gauge. 4 gauge is enough. So there's an example of 4 gauge there, and then there's a heavier, higher quality 2 gauge. It's also finer copper and thicker insulation. Honestly, for what we're doing, this is enough. So on the ends of them, I'm using these copper or brass ends, basically go inside of the end like that. And I'm using this crimping tool that's quite widely available at most automotive stores to give her a really hard whack and imprint the end of it. And then on the end of each cable, I'm using these shrink wraps. So the shrink wrap goes over the end to kind of tidy things up. So when you put them on, give them a real hard yank to make sure that they're not loose. If there's any amount of looseness that you feel into it, hit it again, crimp it again, or if it still isn't good, do it over again. So anyways, that's my little spiel on battery cables and ground cables. I did get the pigtail in to hook up the backup light switch, so we're going to do that as well. We'll get that done in place. That's a no big deal thing, but still it was kind of something that stopped us. Then over here on the distributor, I didn't have a hold down bracket, so the hold down bracket was basically just a piece of flat metal plate. I drilled a hole into it, put a groove on the side so that when I tighten it down, it will hold the distributor in place. Probably could have ordered one, but for the 15 or 20 minutes it took for me to make this little thing, we're all good to go on that. Now the next thing up, like I mentioned in the last episode, was we want to mount the coil right here. Someone was kind enough to send me pictures of the original coil mounting bracket that would go on a flathead Ford, and then these 2 bolts are the 2 bolts that would hold it in place. So we've made a bracket over in the other garage from the firewall mounting coil bracket plus a piece of sheet metal. I'll go over and I'll show you that. So show you what we made up, and we'll get that in place and get the coil in. And then on the back of the car, one thing we were going to do, the owner wanted backup plates on this particular car. So we want to mount them right here. So that's where he wants them. So we took out the last bolt of the spreader bar. I made a little bracket that the backup lights will go on there. So I'll show you those in a couple seconds. Here are the backup lights we want to use. They're just little white LED lights we picked up off Amazon. I think I bought 10 of them in a package for 10 bucks or some 12 bucks or something a while ago. I've used these for backup lights before. I know most high boys don't have backup lights, but anyways, this was a request to do. Not a big deal, so we're going to take care of it. So I made a little bracket, like I said, that was going to go on the spreader bar bolt. Just started off with a piece of cardboard like that, kind of get the gist of what we wanted. Then we came in the shop. I think that's 14 gauge metal. Just drilled a couple. This is a 3/4 inch hole, and then that's a 1/2 inch hole for the spreader bar bolt. So that would go on like that. And then the final piece you can see here is all painted up. So the lights have like a little rubber grommet. Little grommet goes inside the hole, and then we'll push the light in place. So we'll get both of those put on the car. This was the coil bracket similar to the one that our car owner supplied to me. They wanted to basically attach to the head, as I just described a few minutes ago. So once I had some feedback and I went and looked at a couple Rogers journals to see how people would mount a coil, came up with a solution. Oh, those 2 bolts is where the coil normally mounts anyways. Let's put it back there. And like, again, thanks to the folks that reached out to me and sent me pictures. And ultimately I came up with this. So made a piece, same thing. It's a piece of 14 gauge, oh, there we go, apologize. A piece of 14 gauge sheet metal. We cut the bracket apart, welded it along this line. I left this bolt in place. So this is something that as you squeeze this with the threaded rod in place to hold the coil in place, then you can lock it down with this bolt. So this is going to mount on a 45-degree angle like that on the head, and we'll be able to put the coil in place. So we'll get that put on here in a few minutes. We'll show you that as well. There's the coil mounting bracket in place right now. Like I said, it mounts in the original position of where it would on a 49 to 53 flathead. Standing up vertical. I've got it in place so that I can put the attachment for the Ford electronic ignition. There's going to be a little bracket that snaps over the top of these 2 terminals here, and then the wiring harness will go through there. I'll get that in place in a couple of minutes. But anyway, it's in there nice and tight. We've got a nice short line to go from here to the top of the distributor. And then along the back, I've got the backup lights in place right now. Got those brackets in, and I put the little lights in there. It's relatively discreet. I was trying to find another place to put them more out of the way, but that doesn't look too bad. I mean, tell me what you think. I think driving down the road or whatever, or backing up somewhere, someplace, I mean, when the lights come on, people will know you're backing up, which is what the owner wants in this particular case. So anyways, another little thing done. Okay, so it's about 4 hours later. I know that it doesn't look much different than what it did a couple seconds ago, but all of the wiring harness is now wired in. The distributor is now wired into the wiring harness. We've got the little clip on top of the coil, so everything's hooked up there. This particular coil, I checked it. I thought maybe we could go without a ballast resistor, but it's only 3 ohms, and I think you need a 5 or 6 ohm coil in order to not run the ballast resistor. So like I said, when I checked it, it's just under 3 ohms, so that makes me think that we still need to use the ballast resistor, and it doesn't specifically say on the coil to be used with or without a ballast resistor. So we've got a ballast resistor hooked up right now. I just have to make a little bracket that'll probably mount it right about there. It's all wired in, got the wires hooked up to the solenoid, and then on the inside we've got everything all nice and neat and plugged in place. Not sure if we can see up there or not. It's a little bit dark, but everything, all the wires are wired in. We have the transmission tunnel back on, the shifter boot on, the backup switch. We got the pigtails for that. That's hooked up now. I know this is all small, tiny little things, but it all takes a wicked amount of time, you know, running it and trying to make everything look nice and neat and not have wires hanging all over the place. The wires hanging there are for something else. Like I said before, one wire is for the USB port, and then the other wires are for the light switch, and we're just waiting for the pigtail to come in there. So I think next up tomorrow, I'm hoping to start working on putting the radiator in place, or maybe working on hooking up the back taillights, but still lots more to do. A lot of small stuff that takes up a lot of time, but like if you've built a hot rod, you know what it's like. So anyways, we're carrying on, we're pushing forward with all the little details now. So today we're fitting the radiator shell and the radiator on Brenda's Roadster. Ideally, if you could fit this before it was painted, it is definitely the best way to go. But unfortunately, we didn't have the radiator to fit it in before it got painted. So we're going to have to do this with the paint on it. One thing for fitting it's like what we want to get it best fit that we can for when the hood goes on. So you can go on Google and you can find the dimensions for a hood. Now the one constant here is the hood center bar. So this hood center bar basically goes into a set of holes. So that is the width. So what I've done right now, I've just got it dummied in place here with a couple screws. I've got a wire holding it together. Now the measurements for a hood are 32 inches at the top between there and there, and 32 1/16 across the bottom. So basically what this boils down to for me to kind of get the fitting going is that whatever dimension it is from this point to this point, it's going to be 11/16 longer across the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to adjust the radiator shell out so that I'm a little wider at the bottom. Then I'm going to mark where my radiator up through the bottom. So right now I put a green line there where the dead center hole is in the frame for the radiator mounting bolts. So once I have that lined up, then I can mark on the bottom tabs of well, it actually looks as though I'm a little off there right now, but we'll deal with that. If I have to, I'll put a little plate there or something that it sits on, but ultimately we need to get it in the right place. So I'll get some measurements going here, see where we are, and see where we have to drill the holes, and then we're going to go from there. So I've got the radiator shell in the right position now. Across the bottom here was 32 13/16, which is the gap, I guess, so to speak, between here and here. It looks like we are sitting in the middle there for where the radiator bracket, the radiator hole is going to be drilled. So I'll mark those on both sides. It looks as though the tab is not long enough, which kind of doesn't surprise me. Unfortunately, this radiator, there it is. Don't know if you can see it or not. No, I can't quite get. Yep, there it is. There is the hole right there. So it looks as though the tabs are not long enough, so we're going to put some notches into it. The other thing is I'm quite certain that this radiator shell is going to be sitting like too far down in order for the alignment. We'll take some measurements off of the pickup truck relative to the distance from the bottom of the frame. I think if we go over there right now, typically the radiator shell is going to sit up off of the frame instead of sitting on the frame. The tabs actually on the pickup truck over here, as you can see right there, it was actually sitting on the tabs in this particular case. So obviously those ones are too short. And then the radiator shell probably sits, by my estimation, about 3/8 of an inch up off of the frame. in order to get the hood alignment correct. So some of that we're going to have to do after we put the hood on, adjust the radiator shell up and down so we've got proper hood gap. For now, what we'll do is we'll cut those notches, because now we've got the distance from the radiator shell to the cowl. We've got that good across the top. Now it's a matter of making this adjustment this way so that everything is square. Today we worked on putting the radiator into the frame. As I mentioned, the feet on the bottom of the radiator we bought, they weren't wide enough. So what we've done is made a little steel plate with two 5/16" nuts and bolts. There's a round head on the other side. And then this is a 3/8 coarse thread bolt with a lock washer and a washer underneath it. And there's a 1/4" piece of rubber washer here made up of, not sure what it was made from. I had a piece of rubber kicking around the shop. I've used this before. You want something with a little bit of cushion onto it. You can buy the spring kits that they recommend, but ultimately you want something to absorb the shock, mainly because you can get fatigue on the aluminum bracket and it can break off in time. So if you've got a little bit of a cushion there, it shouldn't break off. Like I said, the spring kits, they work as well, but a little bit of rubber cushion. The other thing is that potentially when we start putting the hood on and fitting the sides of the hood, the radiator and the shell, radiator and shell, or just the shell, may have to come up this direction in order to fit the sides on. We'll see. There's two approaches. You raise the radiator or lower the radiator with the shell on it, or you re-drill the holes in the pad to basically move the radiator shell up so that your hood is square. But that's coming up. Right now, I've shortened up the radiator support rods to fit the grill, to fit the radiator where the radiator should be. It's within like a 1/16 of an inch right now. So we still have a little bit of play there that we can adjust out, move the radiator this way or that way to allow for the hood hinge to go on. I didn't change anything from when we just previously fitted it. Over on the grill shell itself, I've assembled that now. I've put the grill in. I've put the stainless steel trim around the outside. We've got the front bezel and the radiator cap on. The one thing, when you put these little bezels on behind, there's a little nut. I'll try and flip this over without doing any damage or dropping it. I will show you. So there is a little nut right there as a lock washer. Do not over tighten it. If you over tighten it, that enamel that's on the front will just go boing and it'll chip out. So you just got to put it on snug enough. Now, so what some people will do, they'll basically finger tighten this on, but they'll put epoxy behind to hold it in place. But don't over tighten it, because you'll be buying a new one. Been there, I've done it. So yeah, that's my word of advice on fitting the trim on. The radiator cap is a fake one, so it just basically goes through with a bolt that comes with the kit. All this stuff here is reproduction too, so it's not new stuff. Worst case scenario, I guess if we muck something up, then we'll buy another one, but that is absolutely not ideal. Everything is in place right now and looking good. I've trial fitted on the radiator again, and we're still in good condition. The thing right now, though, is I don't want to permanently put it in place until we get these bottom radiator hoses in place, because I think they're not going to go on with the radiator bolted in place. I think we're going to have to fit them on there and then bring the radiator in and push it up against them. Now, the other thing is the top radiator hose mounts present a bit of a problem for us. I know there's a solution, and probably someone watching this is going to tell us, but the thermostat housing here is 1.25 inches, and the radiator is 1.75 inches. So obviously we must have to use a reducer of some kind. or something, because we can't go from 1.25 straight up to 1 3/4. Hopefully I'll figure that out by the end of this episode, but if not, that's a question to anybody watching. What did you do? I 100% sure not the first person to do this, and someone else there has done this before, so hopefully we can learn from someone else on this one. So we're still waiting for a few parts to come in. So what I did, I made up a little list here of all the different things I need to do to finish it, or not everything, but a lot of the things we have to do. So I'm going to pick away at as many of these as possible. It may not be all that exciting. I apologize for that, but there's things that we've got to do. I did go in the house and I picked up that little Ford emblem I was talking about. Remember I said about not over tightening it? So if you over tighten it, you'll see right there, it'll flex too much and then boing, the old enamel will come flaking out of there. You'll see that on original ones. You'll see it on the reproductions. It's basically the same issue. So like I said, it's got to be snug, but don't over tighten it because you'll do like I did with this one. One of the things we had to do was to plug up the speedo sensor on the transmission. Because we're running a GPS speedometer, there's the GPS antenna there. And like I said in a previous episode, because we used an S10 tail shaft housing, and I think the shaft inside must be from a Mustang or a Camaro or something, the Speedo gear doesn't line up with the hole, and there may not even be a Speedo gear on the inside with it. So what we did, I went out and I got this little rubber expandable plug, and I've put that up inside to plug the hole up for now. Probably we could get a dummy Speedo gear with a bracket and hold it in place, but this plug, when I expand it out, seems to be very snug inside. So we're going to use that for now. That may be a bad idea. Tell me what you think, if it's a silly thing to do or not, but I put it in there and it's pretty snug. It's not going anywhere right now. So I got time to do something else if this is a stupid idea. Let me know on that one. Another thing I was working on, we've got to put the cowl gaskets on. Now this is a cotton material. There it is there. It's not that difficult to put on. It consists of little brackets, and I'll try, I don't know if I can do this without losing it here, but there's little brackets and then there's little studs that you put through, and then you bend them over the edge. So first time I did this, I couldn't get it on. So a friend of mine said, well, no, you just put it on like this. So I was trying to put it in from the top to bottom and stretch it and put it in the hole. Because ultimately when you measure this up, you'll measure it for the length and then cut it back probably another 3/8 of an inch shorter than what it needs to be. That way it's going to be, taut when it's on there. So what you do, as you see right here, you hook it in the top, leave it over the edge, hook it in the bottom, and then hopefully I can do this while I'm on, and then you just roll it over the edge like this. Now, I know you 32 and 33, 34 Ford guys are going to tell me, yep, I know that, but hopefully that's a tip for somebody that hasn't done this, and that's the little trick for putting the cowl gasket on. So we've got them on the grill shell. I've got them over here on the cowl as well. That was one of the things that we ticked off on our list. So all good on that. So what I'm going to do, and I keep on plugging away here on this list, get as much things done as I can before time runs out for the video. So here we are. I decided to put the grill shell back on and do the first trial fit for the top of the hood. Now, I didn't expect it to be perfect because there's quite a few things to make the alignment. As I'd stated before, the first thing we wanted to do was make sure that the distance between here and here was correct. We certainly have that. I've put the hood on right now, and I've put some masking tape onto it, and the first thing I've already figured out right now, the grill shell is actually tilted too far this way, so I'm going to have to tilt the grill shell or the radiator a little more this way to get the alignment on the top of the hood. I don't want to put the sides on just yet until I have a nice gap on all of this, and then the sides should actually be a lot easier to fit in place. The other thing, I'm still waiting for some parts, unfortunately, but that's the way it goes. The big thing we've got to find right now is I've got to find the lower radiator hoses that go from the flathead to the radiator here. I want to put, my suspicion is to put these on, I need to put them on and then add with the radiator as opposed to try and squeeze them over these things. They're really short. I know Carpenter makes them. I don't know if I can find something locally that's got a little bit of a bend into it to use there. We're going to look at that, but currently I don't have those hoses. So right now, just playing with the hood a little bit to see where we fit and where we have to go next. Going to go try and source those lower radiator hoses. That way I can kind of mount the radiator in permanently and put the fan on and a whole bunch of other things. But we're still making a lot of progress on a lot of little things. Over there on the chair is my list, current list that is, of things I still have to do. There's a lot of other things. There's going to be some more things added to it as we push the car to the finishing stages. Probably what we're going to do next week is we're going to start working on another project over in the other shop and still kind of pick away on this one. But like as far as doing a full video on this one, we're probably going to be showing little bits and pieces as we solved a few problems and work it to the finish line. So that's it for this week at Coldstream Rod Shop. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Come on back next week and tell me what you think about the different questions I had in the video. Everybody take care. Have a great week.